So if you couldn't hear that, he said Hitler been dead, y'all living in the 40s. So this was the outskirts of Cincinnati, Ohio today. I believe the name of the town in which this failed provocative act by a group of fascists. You saw the emblem on their former flag there. Um, but yeah, Lincoln Heights, Ohio. Pretty strong history. It was apparently the first all black town north of the Mason Dixon line, if I recall correctly. But this is just more proof that arm the black nation. The black nation is already armed. We have YNs out here with Glocks with switches. We don't need anybody to tell us to arm ourselves. The people and the people alone are the motive force in the making of world history. The masses are the real heroes, while we ourselves are often childish and ignorant. And without this understanding, it is impossible to acquire even the most rudimentary knowledge. So, facts, raw facts from the Bible. So, yeah, like there was no organize this. This is what I keep trying to tell people. Like the masses, by and large, are already ready for this stuff. Okay, like you ask why the Klan and Nazis and shit generally don't show up to black neighborhoods, it's because shit like this will happen. Shit like this will happen. Like we are not going to simply tolerate that shit. So, um, there's a lot that the mainstream left of the United States can learn from the people instead of trying to organize the people to vote for Kamala Harris and do other such idiotic things. Like, we need to learn from the people. Enemies were cited. Enemies engaged in an act of provocatorism were cited. And there was no debate over the optics. There was no long, drawn out ideological struggle over the nature of fascism in the United States. Like half you motherfuckers are still arguing over whether or not the United States is fascist. Like George Jackson would say, that is a statement of your own toothlessness, your own lack of seriousness. These comrades, my people, are serious. Do I think 2020 would have gone different if there was a capable vanguard? Why does everybody want to be the fucking vanguard? The vanguard is determined by the people themselves. The people follow those who have the correct line that is demonstrated in practice. The left in this country is weak because we allow ourselves to be pulled here and there and led down a whole bunch of blind alleys. Like I saw somebody arguing earlier that Philly DSA should not be working with the Socialist Rifle Association. Why should Philly DSA not be working with the Socialist Rifle Organization? Like, what in your head has you convinced that in this era of fascist lone wolf shootings and terrorist attacks, what freak idea in your head has you convinced that building a working relationship with the Socialist Rifle Organization, which is not, I speak as a member, not a militia. Why the fuck wouldn't you want to work with SRA? What was their justification? Oh, I don't like guns and I live in a city with a lot of gun violence. Yes, that is true. That's one contradiction. But the primary contradiction is the fact that there are fascists out on the streets doing shit like this. There are fascists that want to hurt people simply because they're trans. There are fascists that want to hurt people simply because they are a DSA. Simply because they are in PSL, simply because they are in left-wing organizations, simply because they were black, simply because they're Latino. You literally have people that are impersonating ICE agents going from door to door, rounding up people. One lady in my state was almost dragged away and raped because some idiot kicked in her door and asked for her papers. So this is the reality that we live in. And some people, they want to live in a little gentrified boba tea la la land and be like, oh, well, we don't need guns. Yes, the fuck. Yes, the fuck we need guns. Our enemies have guns. Why the fuck do we not need guns? Like, what is your reasoning? What is your idiopolitical, practical reasoning? You don't have any. It's just vibes. It's entirely subjective. So you ask, oh, why does DSA have a diversity problem? Why does my org have a diversity? It's because of shit like this. This is the shit that the people are on, and you're arguing against guns and leftists being skilled in their use, or at least knowing which end the bullet comes out of, because you are personally afraid of guns. I hate saying this, but suck it the fuck up. Like, do you think that your enemy is going to give a fuck because, oh, he's scared of guns, so let's beat him to death instead?
Burn that bitch up, man. Let that bitch burn. Let that bitch burn.
This is why we should learn from the masses. Oh, by the way, check this out.
Hello, and welcome to the
This is from Direct Action United, which I just subscribed to.
DSA Defense Block First Firearm Safety
Definitely check this out. It's dope. It teaches you how not to hurt yourself while handling firearms.
Teaching. Today, we're going to be going over some basic firearm safety rules and introduction to firearms, so that way you or a loved one knows how to be safe when owning and operating a firearm. We'll also be going over some theory about why socialists like ourselves should or might want to consider owning and using a firearm. So guys, welcome to the Socialist Firearms Training. We're going to be going over the rudimentary basics of how to safely hold, use, and store firearms, as well as some question and answer towards the end. But because, of course, this is a socialist organization, we're going to start off by reading some theory. I have 7 excerpts here from socialist writers and philosophers over the last 100 years discussing what we're doing.
Let's finish up my old game, my old Civ game.
And
while we listen to this comrade's lovely voice.
Why we're doing it. So we're going to start with Karl Marx and his address to the Central Committee of the Communist League in 1850. The workers must be armed and organized. The whole proletariat must be armed at once with muskets, rifles, cannon, and ammunition, and the revival of the old-style citizens' militia directed against the workers must be opposed. Where the formation of this militia cannot be prevented, the workers must try to organize themselves independently as a proletarian guard, with elected leaders and with their own elected general staff. They must try to place themselves not under the orders of the state authority, but of the revolutionary local councils set up by the workers. Where the workers are employed by the state, they must arm and organize themselves into special corps with elected leaders or as part of the proletarian guard. Under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the proletariat must be frustrated by force if necessary. Vladimir Lenin, The Disarmament Slogan, 1916. Disarmament is the ideal of socialism. There will be no wars in socialist society, consequently, disarmament will be achieved. But whoever expects that socialism will be achieved without a social revolution and the dictatorship of the proletariat is not a socialist. Dictatorship is state power based directly on violence. And in the 20th century, as in the age of civilization generally, violence means neither a fist nor a club, but troops. To put disarmament in the program is tantamount to making the general declaration, we are opposed to the use of arms. There is as little Marxism in this as there would be if we were to say, we oppose violence.
So yeah, when he's saying that we oppose violence, he's not saying that we don't oppose violence among the people. Yeah, like, yeah, the socialists are like, yeah, oh yeah, gang violence, really dope. But a Marxist analysis of the nature of the state. What the hell am I watching? It is Intro for Firearm Safety for Working Class Teaching. It's Direct Action United. I've never heard of them before, but apparently this guy's a DSA member and he is educating our comrades on how not to blow their dicks off. So all power to him. But it's really good. But anyways, going back to what he was saying, you cannot overthrow the system by any means other than violence. It's really that simple. Like, these people murdered non-violent organizers like Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, Martin Luther King Jr. had armed bodyguards, but he was not going around saying that we should burn America to the ground, okay? This guy wanted to build a new order based on what we can broadly define as democratic socialism. But the feds were not having that, so they set up a patsy and they had him bumped off. So you cannot overthrow the system with anything other than equal or greater violence. So if that is not your analysis, then you're really not a socialist, you're not a communist, you're not a Marxist of any type. You are fundamentally a liberal. And it's not a moral judgment, it's not a value judgment. I get it. Especially if you grew up in an abusive household where guns were involved, yeah, I get why you would like guns. But that is no substitute for political analysis of the need for revolutionary violence to change the shit.
Class which does not strive to learn to use arms to...
Oh, by the way, Civ 7 has early access, so I'm going to try to play that.
Acquire arms only deserves to be treated like slaves. We cannot, unless we have become bourgeois pacifists or opportunists, forget that we are living in a class society from which there is no way out, nor can there be, save through the class struggle and the overthrow of the power of the ruling class.
I try not to talk over videos.
Mao Zedong, conclusion to the 6th plenary session of the CCP's 6th Central
I
Committee,
love how people that speak English natively have varying pronunciations of Mao Zedong.
1938. It is very difficult for the laboring people who have been
My GSA, Gender Sexuality Alliance Club, wants us to do a report on a black queer figure, so I was wondering if it would be cringe to do it on you. Why would you want to do it on me? I'm just some dude that talks on the internet. Do it on somebody dope like Marsha P. Johnson, or I was about to say Bayard Rustin, but he kind of sucks. But I'm no, this is not fake self-abasement. Like, don't do your project on me. Why would you do that? Like, oh yeah, there's this dude on the internet that talks a lot and has a couple tens of thousands of followers. He's definitely cooking. Yeah, don't do that. That's too terminally online, bro.
deceived and intimidated by the reactionary ruling classes for thousands of years, to awaken to
I am flattered that I crossed your mind, but yeah.
the importance of having guns in their own hands. Every communist must grab the truth. Political power
Grasp, comrade, grasp.
grows out of the barrel of a gun. Our principle is that the party commands the gun, and the gun must never be allowed to command the party. Yet, having guns, we can create party organizations. We can also create cadres, create schools, create culture, create mass movements. All things grow out of the barrel of a gun. Experience in the class struggle in the era of imperialism teaches us that it is only by the power of the gun that the working class and the laboring masses can defeat the armed bourgeoisie and the landlords. In this sense, we may say that only with guns can the whole world be transformed. We are advocates
Spitting facts. It's all right here in the Mao Bible.
of the abolition of war. We do not want war, but war can only be abolished through war. And in order to get rid of the gun, it is necessary to take up the gun. Malcolm X, By Any Means Necessary, 1964. The history of unpunished violence against our people clearly indicates that we must be prepared to defend ourselves,
I love how white dudes get into Malcolm.
or we will continue to be a defenseless people at the mercy of a ruthless.
Do you want me to turn my mic all the way up so it blasts your fucking ears out? Because I could do that. I could totally do that. Oh, Lord, I'll fix you fuckers. I always criticize. How's that?
And violent racist mob. We assert that in those areas where the government is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of our people, that our people are within their rights to protect themselves by whatever means necessary. This is the thing you need to spread the word about.
Your mic is too low. I can't hear you. There. Now I'm going to scream at you people like Haas does. All right, now you're happy.
Among our people wherever you go. Never let them be brainwashed into thinking that whenever they take the steps to see that they're in a position to defend themselves, they're being unlawful. The only time you're being unlawful is when you break the law. It is lawful to have something to defend yourself. Why, I heard President Johnson either today or yesterday, I guess it was today, talking about how quick this country would go to war to defend itself. Why, what kind of fool do you look like, living in a country that'll go to war at the drop of a hat to defend itself? And here you've got to stand up in the face of vicious police dogs and blue-eyed crackers waiting for somebody to tell you what to do to defend yourself. Those days are over. They're gone. That's yesterday. The time for you and me to allow ourselves to be brutalized non-violently is passé. Be non-violent only with those who are non-violent to you. And when you can bring me a non-violent racist, bring me a non-violent segregationist, then I'll get non-violent. But don't teach me to be non-violent until you teach some of those.
I'm sorry, Gato Michikado. I hope I didn't have you hurt yourself. Do I know how many holes femoids have? The fuck is a femoid? Is that what these degenerates are calling women? Jesus Christ.
Those crackers to be non-violent. You've never seen a non-violent cracker. It's hard for a racist to be non-violent.
I've seen a non-violent C word. They're called Quakers. They're Quaker crackers.
A man with a rifle or a club can only be stopped by a person who defends himself with a rifle or a club. That's equality. If you have a dog, I must have a dog. If you have a rifle, I must have a rifle. If you have a club, I must have a club. This is equality. If the United States government doesn't want you and me to get rifles, then take the rifles away from these racists. If they don't want you and me to use clubs, take the clubs away from the racists. If they don't want you and me to get violent, then stop the racists from being violent. Don't teach us nonviolent when those crackers are nonviolent. Those days are over. Brother Malcolm again, speech at Ford Auditorium, 1965. Right now, what's going on and around in Saigon and Hanoi and the Congo and elsewhere, they are violent when their interests are at stake. But of all that violence that they display on the international level, when you and I want just a little bit of freedom, we're supposed to be nonviolent. They're violent in Korea, they're violent in Germany, they're violent in the South Pacific, they're violent in Cuba, they're violent wherever they go. When it comes time for you and me to protect ourselves against lynchings, they tell us to be nonviolent. Brothers and sisters, if you and I would just realize that once we learn to talk the language that they understand, then they will get the point. You can't ever reach a man if you don't speak his language. If a man speaks the language of brute force, you can't come to him with peace. Good night, he'll break you in two, and as he has been doing all along. If a man speaks French, you can't speak to him in German. If he speaks Swahili, you can't communicate with him in Chinese. You've been in this country long enough to know the language that the Klan speaks. They only know one language. And what you and I have to start doing in 1965 is start learning a new language. Learn the language that they understand.
This is early access Civ 7. So, I very possibly might be the very first person playing this.
And when they come up on our doorstep
I'm not.
to talk, we can talk. And they will get the point. There'll be a
Alright, I've read all this before. Get into the... This guy starts with 15... No, not 15. Around 10 minutes of theory. Dude knows his stuff. That's good. This is kind of like what the Black Panthers used to do. Like, before you were allowed to play with the gun, you had to be politically educated.
So how do we do that safely? There are 4 basic tenets to gun safety. These are what we're referred to as core rules. The first, always assume every gun is loaded and ready to fire. Sometimes a gun is loaded, and if we believe it's not ready to fire, if the safety's on, etc., then we're going to be a little careless, or we might be prone to being careless. It's important to recognize that every gun is always loaded and ready to fire, pretty much right up until you personally have checked it yourself. Now, I'll demonstrate with this rifle here. I have in here a safety flag. So this goes into the action of the gun and down into, basically into the barrel, which confirms that the barrel is empty. And as you can see, we have designated over here as a safe direction that the action itself is empty. So there are no bullets in the gun.
No, Civ actually comes out, Civ 7 comes out for plebes on the 11th, so in a few more days.
So just to clear that up first. So
that's because you have a boring voice, Gato Michoacano. I have a feeling that you're going to roast the fuck out of me tomorrow, but whatever.
Every gun is always loaded and ready to fire. If we have that principle down, pretty much everything else is going to be more or less a matter of redundancy. But safety is built on redundancy. So we want to make sure that we're not just being safe in one step, but in every step of the way. Firearms are wonderful tools for self-defense, for the liberation of the proletariat, or for more practical purposes like hunting and whatnot. But they're also an incredibly violent tool and very, very easy to have an accident. Now, your gun itself, chances are it's going to be a pretty reliable piece of equipment. And if you are being safe, the gun is going to be safe. But again, we don't take chances because unlike any other piece of machinery you're using, it takes only one slip up to critically injure yourself or someone else.
Yeah, I was actually talking about the Shakers the other day on Twitter. They didn't entirely die out. Like, they would allow new people to come, but as technology got doper and doper, less people wanted to go live in a lovely New England colonial village and weave baskets and shit. So, yeah. I think there's only 2 Shakers left. But interesting history, though.
Or do damage to your own personal property. So that's step number 1. This gun, as I said, we can see that it is not loaded and it is not ready to fire. I checked that for you. And again, that's what this flag is for. Number 2, never let the muzzle point to anything you are not willing to destroy. Now, some people will repeat this later on as you're not willing to shoot, but it's important to keep in mind the destructive power of a firearm. So we do not point a firearm anywhere we are not willing to have and see something destroyed. Now, again, we designate this over here as a safe area. And the way that my firearm right now is that it's always going to be pointed down at the ground. Generally speaking, anywhere you go, down is a safe direction. Now, sometimes you'll be in like a concrete building or something and maybe up is a safe direction. But you always want to make sure that if your firearm is not being discharged by you intentionally, it's going to be pointed in a safe direction. And again, down is generally the case. Now, this is pretty easy to mess up with a handgun. So I have a prop here. Because of how easy it is to point a handgun in an unsafe direction, I've opted for a fake firearm here. And the reason why I say that a handgun is more prone to negligent aiming, should we say, is that it goes with your hand. While a rifle here takes your whole upper body to maneuver, this takes only your hand. So if you're at the range and you're firing and you get called off the line, and then you turn towards whoever you're talking to, where have you pointed the gun? Now directly at someone else or in an unsafe direction. Or you might be at a gun store and pointing it in a safe direction when someone walks in front of you. If your gun isn't pointed in a safe direction now, you always have to manually make sure that you're doing that. You're now pointed the gun at someone. Again, especially this one's pretty light, so it's a little easier to forget. But if you're talking and gesturing, as most people do with their hands, I've just flagged every single person in this room. And if this were a real firearm, that would have been pretty much grounds for my dismissal right away. So we always keep our guns pointed in a safe direction. One of the ways that we keep this in mind is by a mental exercise in which we envision that a laser beam is coming out of the front of the gun at all times. And then anything you point at, kind of like a lightsaber, will be cut in the way. So right now I've held this down at the ground in a direction which no one's getting hurt. I'm going to load the firearm here with a laser sight. This is a bore sight, so this is a laser emitter that gets loaded right into the barrel of the gun. All right, so I'm going to load this one directly into the magazine as if it were a regular bullet. Now, I'll have you guys know that my magazine here does have dummy rounds in them. So this is a solid plastic artificial bullet. So it cannot be fired. It cannot cause harm to anyone unless I guess you threw it really hard. Put that in the magazine, and then we'll load in this laser point, as you can see over on the wall. We'll remove the flag and put it into battery. And now you can see my firearm here. It's a laser on the wall. So this is kind of how you want to imagine your gun doing at all times. And if it ever crosses into an unsafe direction, that every single place where that red light appears on the wall is something that I could theoretically perforate with the bullet. So we always got to keep in mind whenever we're pointing a firearm in any direction,
builders in this game, huh?
that is something that could potentially happen.
Fascinating.
Again, if you're doubling up on these safety rules, especially if you're being safe, it's not going to. So we'll remove the magazine and then eject the round. Now I will clear this again. Hold on. It's awkward to do without. There we go. Now the magazine has been removed and we've cleared the chamber and the chamber flag is back in. So that pretty much covers the step 2, which is always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Additionally, always make sure you know what is a safe direction. I kind of covered this at the beginning, but if you're someplace like a range, ask. Downrange is always going to be your safe direction, but sometimes they're going to call the range cold or the range hot. And that means that if it's cold, people may be going down the range to adjust the targets, in which case it is no longer a safe direction to point your firearm. So know the rules of the range, know who you're with, make sure that everyone's following those, because a safe direction could easily become an unsafe direction if you're not careful. All right? So part number 3, keep your finger off the trigger and the safety on until you're ready to fire. So this is a pretty basic rule. Hopefully everybody understands this already. But this part here,
Yeah, I think a lot of people like they just think the shit's they think that it's like in the movies. But yeah, looking down a barrel of an unloaded gun. Like when I go shooting or when I handle my firearm, I like look like I rack the slide back and I make sure there's nothing in that. Like Pete, do you have any idea how many people have killed themselves while trying to clean their guns? Like a lot. Like a lot. It's insane. Because like people think that shit's a joke. People that don't realize that these are fucking deadly ass tools. So yeah, I always check and make sure that that it's clear. Otherwise, like bad shit can happen. Negligent discharges happen all the time. People hurt themselves or unalive themselves by being careless with weapons.
the trigger is, of course, what actually activates the firearm. And you want to make sure that nothing is ever in here. Some people call this your sacred space, and do not violate that until you're absolutely ready to do so. So your finger should always be on the trigger, and your safety should be on. Now, can't really show you this all that easily. My safety has been on this whole time. So until you're ready to fire the gun, do not flick that safety off. So, again, if we were getting ready to fire, going down range, again, in our safe direction here.
I don't know, I just started playing it 15 minutes ago. What do you people want from me?
Trigger until I've decided that I'm ready to fire. So we'll aim, the cover off. So I'll be aiming down the field. And only when my sight is on and I'm ready to fire, my sight is on target, I will flick the safety off, and then I will fire the gun. Now again, we're not using any bullets. There is no ammunition at all. But again, never touch your trigger until you're ready to fire the gun. That's also going to help you with pointing the firearm in an unsafe direction. So if, like we were before with our handgun, God forbid you do make a mistake and you start flagging people.
Of course, it would not be chat. It would not be BRG's chat.
Your finger is off the trigger.
Drugs.
You're probably going to be fine. I mean, you're good. You should be yelled at, and someone probably will. But that trigger is not going to be pulled, and thus, even if your firearm is loaded and ready to fire, as everyone will always assume it is, nothing's going to happen. All right, and then we come to our fourth and final core rule. Be sure of your target and what's beyond it. Especially when firing something like an AR-15, which has higher powered rounds than your handgun, you always want to make sure that you know what you're shooting at and what's behind it. So, if you are at a range and you're firing a high caliber round at a steel plate that's too close, you want to know that, oh, that's steel. My round could ricochet off that.
Well, it's interesting
or
how
if you're firing at, say, a wooden target,
so these
you want to
cities
know,
are
okay,
actually
what's
like
behind it.
real cities, like they develop.
This
like
is
real
doubly
cities.
important for self-defense because of what we call over-penetration. This is when your bullet goes too far through an object. So if you're in an indoor situation like we are here, and I had to fire at someone in our safe direction here, I should know not only what I'm shooting at, but this is in fact someone that I am required to shoot at this moment.
What's that profound
what's behind
bandit?
them? Is there another person behind them? Is there a bedroom behind them? Am I going to shoot through them and into my child's bedroom? Am I going to shoot through the wall into the neighbor's house? Are my neighbors home? Who is upstairs or downstairs? If you're in an apartment situation, is down even a safe direction? Is there someone living directly below you who, God forbid, your firearm is discharged, could be injured by that? Perhaps for you, if you live on the second floor of a 2-story apartment building, maybe up is the only safe direction because of who may or may not be downstairs. So we always want to make sure we know our target and what's behind it, so that way we don't
halftime show.
Shoot something or someone
it's going to be
that we don't want to. All right? Now we're going to be moving on to what are our secondary rules. And these aren't necessary. Now, to clarify, none of these firearm rules are necessarily in any order. It's not less important to be sure of your target than it is to not point your gun at something. These rules are pretty much all those core rules are pretty much all the number one rule of gun safety. But for our secondary rules, these are, again, also not necessarily in order, but all of these are more or less important than the core rules. And doubling up on these again,
Kendrick
you're
and
going to be
SZA?
safe.
Damn,
So the most
I'm a
important thing
bad
to do is
St.
observe
Louisan.
as many of the rules as you can. So, number one, keep your barrel clear of obstructions. Pretty obvious. You don't want to fire your gun if there's something in the barrel.
Hey, Tecumseh, what's up, buddy?
For our flag here,
Okay.
safety flag here, that is in the barrel, I don't want to try firing the gun with that in the barrel. Now, obviously, I'm going to be able to see it. I can't actually even put this into battery with the safety flag in there. It's part of the point. But let's say I pull it out and for whatever reason it's broken. Always make sure before you start firing that your barrel is clear of obstruction. Either do a visual inspection, use a brush, that kind of thing. But when doing so,
Hey, Cahokia.
again, follow the aforementioned rules.
Right
Keep your
across
gun
the river from
always
me.
pointed in a safe direction. So, pull that out. If I wanted to check to make sure that the gun is clear of obstruction, the barrel is clear of obstruction before I start firing, I'm not going to look down the barrel. What you would do for a gun like this, for example, is open it up and look down from the back if you can. Or use
This is
a
Civ
cleaning
7.
rod, something like that, to clear it of obstruction. Do not look down the barrel of your gun. Again, it sounds really obvious, but in momentary situation, you're firing, the gun doesn't sound quite right. You're like, oh, I think that might have been stuck in the barrel. And you look down. Don't do that. So you got to be safe when, of course, doing all this stuff. But that first rule, don't point your gun in an unsafe direction. Looking down the barrel of the gun is pointing the gun directly at your head. That is an unsafe direction.
Most
pretty
people don't
obviously.
even remember that Lil Wayne is still alive.
So make sure that the barrel is clear of obstruction. And I'll put the safety flag back in, just so that way everyone can see at all times that we are, in fact, being safe. Bit awkward to do pointing it straight at the ground, but... All right. Next, know the proper use of your firearm. This is pretty obvious, but you know it's worth mentioning. Most of the time, when you get a new firearm,
Where is
you're
the
going to have an
auto
instruction
explore
manual with
feature?
it, or in my case, you're going to get a link to an instruction manual. Read it. If your gun didn't come with an instruction manual, maybe you're buying used, maybe you're buying like right off the rack or something, go download one. You can find all of them online pretty easily. You can easily find it on YouTube. Make sure you know what you're doing. The last thing you want to do is
It's
not
a very
know
pretty
how your
game,
gun
I'll give
works
it that.
and cause a problem or
Very
damage
pretty.
it, shoot something you're not supposed to, etc. Always make sure you know how your gun works. So this doesn't just go for the
A great barrier
actual
reef.
usage, because they're all pretty much the same point and shoot. But this goes for clearing. So clearing your firearm is making sure that there is no ammunition that can be fired. So that's what I did earlier when I pulled back the action and,
Where is the
had the lever,
auto
or the, not the lever, the
feature?
flag in
Tired
there.
of guiding this guy
That's
around
clearing
the
the
map
gun.
to hold his hand.
Make sure you know how to do that. It's generally going to be one of the first things you learn. And you're always going to want to do that every time someone hands you a firearm. So if you go to a gun store, the clerk, and you ask the clerk, hey, can I look at this firearm? What they're going to do every single time is they're going to clear it. If they don't shop there. They're going to clear it and they're going to hand it to you. And then you are going to also want to clear it. Now, if you don't know how, or if you don't know how to clear your firearm or a firearm someone else is handing to you, ask. Again, it's one of the safety things. You always want to make sure that somehow between the time that the person who just cleared it handed it to you, a bullet didn't fall out of the air and into that firearm.
Yeah,
It's never going to happen, but
I don't know what you hope to achieve.
it's not, I don't want to say it's not impossible because it is impossible, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I saw a video of a guy who, while he was reloading, one of his spent casings popped out of the top of his gun, landed on top of his new magazine, and went right back into the gun. So bizarre things could happen in which somehow a bullet falls into your gun. But it's just better to be safe, and it's good practice anyway.
What the
Every
fuck
time
are
you
you
pick up your
guys
firearm,
doing?
you're going to want to make sure it's cleared. That way you can take
Is
it
that
anywhere.
really necessary?
When I wrap this up
What I ever
and
do
take
to
it out
you
to my
guys? I
car,
just want to be your friends.
it's going to be inevitably pointed in an unsafe direction. And if I know it's been cleared,
fuck,
locked,
Drake.
and safe, then it's okay to transport.
Go away.
Loading and unloading. This is pretty, again, like a lot of this is pretty obvious, but it needs to be said. So you need to know how to make sure you can load and unload your gun. So that's why I brought these plastic bullets. Make sure you know how to put them in your gun. Because if you put them in incorrectly or unsafely,
Yay
you now
is
have
having
an unsafe bullet,
severe
maybe 2 inches
moment
from
of
your hand.
psychosis. Like that's what's going on.
And how to unload it is just as
People
important.
keep saying that
because
he's,
if you
like,
don't
his
know how
mom's
to
death
unload your
triggered it,
gun,
and it
then
very
you're not going to
possibly
be able
might
to
be
get
the
the bullets
case.
out.
But yeah,
So let's put this into battery now with the
there's no
safety
excuse for
flag
saying
out.
like
And again,
that fucked up shit.
these
that
dummy
he's been
rounds are
saying.
in. So you can see exactly what we're talking about here. So we now have the gun and battery, and what we're going to do is unload it. So make sure you know how to do that. Remove the magazine. And here's why clearing is important. Right now, the bolt carrier group, the section here, is closed and locked into the front of the gun. What happened when I pressed that button, the flag flipped down and the bolt carrier group moved into battery, is it stripped one of the bullets out of the magazine and put it into the chamber. Which means, right now there is a, again, dummy round inside the firearm. So, you need to know how to clear your gun, because if you take it out and it's not totally empty, you're going to have, chances are you're going to have a bullet inside the gun. If I were to put it off safe and fire, I would have just fired a bullet. And if I had believed that it was empty and didn't check, I would have just fired a bullet straight through the wall into the neighbor's house. So, to clear this, it's pretty easy. You just basically pull back on it, chances are. And there we go. That's the bullet. So now we'll do that. We'll lock it open. So now you can see that there is no bullet in there. And what's doubly important is to visually check the barrel. Again, we're looking at it in this direction to make sure that there's nothing in there. And then again, I'll be using the safety flag to indicate to everyone else who sees that it is clear and there's no bullets in there. Otherwise, you could have a catastrophic
You are
accident
listening to
pretty easily,
a
even if you followed a
comrade
bunch of the other safety
offer
rules.
an introduction to firearm safety for the working class. It is a teach-in. The comrade has a YouTube channel called Direct Action United, which I highly recommend that you subscribe to. 1 second. Let's see if it can wait. This is more important.
Ammunition, you want to make sure that you're always using the correct ammunition for your gun.
No, I'm totally not
legally in the
rage
United
quitting.
States, it actually has to be stamped onto the actual barrel. So if you were to get in close with a flashlight and look through some of these holes, you'd be able to see it stamped in here. This is chambered in 5.56 or 223. Make sure you know exactly what your gun is chambered in and what the correct ammunition is. So this is going to be pretty prominent when it comes to an AR-15, because AR-15 takes two types of rounds, the 5.56 and the 223, both of which are almost exactly the same. But a 223 round cannot, or I'm sorry, a 5.56 round cannot be safely fired from a gun that is chambered in 223, even though the bullets are almost identical. So you always want to make sure that you know what bullets are safe for your gun and make sure that you are using the correct ones. Another example of this is the very famous Garand, the battle rifle of the United States back in World War II. That is chambered in 30-06, but your modern 30-06 round is too overpressured to safely use. So you want to make sure that not only are you using the correct caliber ammunition, but you're using the correct pressure. Most of the time, it's going to be fine. Like you're almost never going to find a firearm round for your gun that isn't the correct pressure if it's the correct round for the firearm. But always make sure you're checking that. And that goes especially for homemade ammunition, because a lot of people do like to make their own bullets. I guess sometimes it's cheaper. From what I understand nowadays, not so much. But bullet is, of course, made up of kind of three parts. You have the brass casing here, and the actual bullet up here. So people will, and then of course the gunpowder in between, plus like the percussion cap and all that. So when people make their own ammunition, they'll put in their own powder and seal it up. So you want to make sure that if you are buying or using handmade ammunition, using it that it's safe and for the correct pressure and the correct round. The last thing you want to do is fire your rifle or your handgun and have it explode. It can happen.
I wish fascists would do that.
It does happen. And that explosion is going to be going on directly in your hands. And if you're using a rifle, directly against your face. So always make sure you're using the correct ammunition. And that the person who is hand making your ammunition, if so, knows what they're doing. Maintenance. Make sure you know how to clean your gun. Guns are like any other tool nowadays. Generally speaking, you don't really need to do all that much maintenance to it, depending on what it is. But if you don't keep it clean, you don't keep it safe, it's not going to be very usable. I, in fact, have a 50 caliber rifle at my house that was stored unsafely before I got it. It was stored loaded with black powder. So it's a black powder rifle that has powder down at the bottom. Ramrod style, just like you've seen in old movies or movies set in old periods. So it was loaded, and then it was loaded again later on, so it had 2 charges in it. And the gunpowder is corrosive and ate away at the back of the barrel. So after I had it professionally unloaded, they drilled it all out. I was notified that if I ever loaded the gun and fired it, it would probably explode because of how much degradation had gone on inside. So if that gun were well maintained, if it were properly unloaded, that wouldn't have been a problem, and it'd be a totally usable firearm today. So chances are you're not using black powder rifles, so that specific thing isn't really going to be a big problem. But make sure you're maintaining your gun, you're cleaning it, and making sure that it's rust-free, free of obstructions, grease-free if needed, because grease buildup can cause a problem. And also your ammunition. So if you get a box of rounds, your ammunition is going to come in a cardboard box, probably, which of course absorbs water. If your ammunition gets wet or decays, it can become unsafe to use. So make sure that you're not only doing proper maintenance of your firearm,
has a video
but also of your ammunition. Guns. Really, chances are that's more of a storage issue, but make sure you're maintaining your rifle or handgun or any other firearm, just like you would your KitchenAid, for example. Definitely clean your KitchenAid. The last thing you want to do is go to make pasta, and the pasta thing is all gunked up from the last time. It's a nightmare. Don't do it. Detective. And malfunctions. So make sure you know how to clear your malfunction. Now, most of the time, malfunctions are going to be cleared just by removing whatever bullets in there, unloading the gun and making it safe. You're really not going to have anything that breaks most of the time. But again, if your gun has been sitting around for a while, if you haven't been cleaning it, if the last person who owned it hasn't been cleaning it, if your bullets have been soaking in water, there's a chance you can get a malfunction. You'll probably be able to hear it or feel it when you fire the gun. Something doesn't feel quite right, doesn't sound quite right. You're going to be able to check. Make sure you know how to do that. I illustrated this earlier with removing or separating the gun, but make sure you know how to do that. It's not just part of the cleaning, but it's also part of the malfunction checking. So once you get your gun apart, you know your parts, know how to fix them, know how they should look, and if they're out of order. That's pretty much it. Make sure you know what you're doing, and if you have a malfunction that you personally can't fix, take it to someone who knows. Ask a friend, take it to a gunsmith, take it to someone who knows how to fix that for you. Again, the last thing you want to do is do it yourself and critically injure yourself or someone else. So we want to make sure that we're being safe and following those procedures there. Keep in mind that no unsafe gun can ever be handled safely, all right? So and I don't mean keeping this if the safety is off. I mean that if you have a malfunction, a maintenance issue, and the gun is now unsafe, that does not mean you can never handle it safely enough to make it safe. An example of a situation that could happen, it won't, but it could, is if you fire enough rounds through the gun all at once, it gets too hot and it starts cooking off rounds. That means that the bullets themselves are firing automatically because they're too hot. So you're not even touching the gun, the bullets are shooting out. There's nothing you could do to make that gun now safe to handle. The only thing you can do in that situation is remove the magazine, clear the gun, and then, well, actually don't clear the gun in that situation because the bullet currently chambered in the gun could be too hot and go off then on your table. So make sure that it's pointed in a safe direction, but for other malfunctions, clear it, empty it, keep it pointed in a safe direction, and get someone who can help you. Again, it's a lot of these steps kind of overlap, but the last thing you want to do is be unsafe with your own firearm or someone else's, because not only could you hurt someone, but they'll be really mad at you if you do that with someone else's gun. We already kind of covered this, but clear a firearm every time you're handed one, and make sure that it's clear. Perhaps like if I were to hand you this right now, it's already open and cleared. You probably just do a visual check, but it's good practice to clear it anyway. But we already covered that. Safeties can fail. So there is no substitute, or safety is no substitute for any other safety rule. So right now my safety is on, and that should mean that the gun is safe. That doesn't mean I can point in an unsafe direction. Safeties are mechanical, like the rest of the gun, which means it has a potential to fail. And if it fails and you're not being safe with it, relying on the safety, you could have a catastrophic accident. You could fire a bullet through your neighbor's wall. You could fire a bullet into yourself. You could fire a bullet when there's something obstructing the chamber.
Hey!
The safety is never something you can over-rely on.
The leader of
it's sort of like, again, like I mentioned with the cooking off rounds, the trigger discipline. If the gun is firing all on its own, keeping your finger off the trigger is not going to prevent it from firing.
Jose Rizal is the leader of Maya.
Same thing, your safety being on does not mean that the gun cannot be fired necessarily. Your safety is probably not going to break, but again, don't, like with my hand in here, if safety's on, it doesn't mean you can just point it at people. And if your safety does fail, if your gun does have a malfunction, and you're following all the other safety rules, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So if I keep my gun pointed in a safe direction here, and I think my safety's on, because that's another thing. Sometimes you'll remember putting the safety on, but it's not actually on. Or you'll forget which direction you flipped it. So if I'm going off sound, now the safety's off, and I don't bother to check, if I'm not careful, I could fire this gun. Now, obviously, of course, I can't. But if you're pointing it down range and your safety is off, and you accidentally fire the gun, it's going to be a lot safer to do it in a pointed and safe direction than if you have it pointed in an unsafe direction. So don't over-rely on safety features.
Let's engage in some oxamite.
Firearms should be unloaded whenever not in use. So this can be controversial for some personal defense weapons, especially your handgun. But really, you're going to want to keep your firearm unloaded. Keeps it safe. It means every time you go to retrieve it, you know whether or not you have to load it and how you have to handle it safely. It's good practice, and really, it's a good way to prevent an accident that could happen otherwise. And these next couple kind of all go in hand. Store your firearms and your ammunition safely. So you guys probably didn't see when I was getting set up here, but I don't have it on me. But I have a lock directly for this gun. So I have this gun locked whenever not in use. I like to use a cable lock here. There are plenty of different other types. So now this gun cannot be chambered. No rounds can be put in this gun. You can't even put a magazine in it. Nor can you take the gun apart in order to get around it, as long as that lock is on. You're going to want to use a lock. I think most places in the country, you can get them for free from your local police department if you want to do that. There's a Make America Safe or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they're an initiative to make sure that everybody's guns are stored safely. That way, kids and such can't get to them. So not only do I keep a cable lock on the gun itself, I keep stored in this bag, which I also keep padlocked. Um, if you know anything about locks, it's pretty easy to bypass almost all of them, but it's going to prevent a thief or someone who's a little too interested for their own good from being able to access your gun. God forbid your 10-year-old thinks, oh, I want to go see my parents' gun. I want to go see my brother's gun or whatever. And they go and they pull it out. If you're storing it safely, either A, they're not going to be able to get to it. So use a safe, use a bag that's locked, keep it in a location that they can't access. Or, and because you want to, again, redundancy is safety, you want to keep the firearm itself locked. If, I don't have 10-year-olds in my house, but if a 10-year-old, somehow got access to this gun, they're not going to be able to hurt themselves with it because I have it stored safely. I also have ammunition stored safely. So whenever you're storing ammunition, don't just keep it, dry, like I said before, which is important, obviously for reasons we already clarified, but you also want it to be inaccessible. The last thing you want is for someone to somehow bypass your lock or have a gun of their own and take access to your ammunition when they shouldn't. So it's not just don't steal my ammo, but it's a real safety concern. If someone that you know has we'll get to that one next, has destructive tendencies, you want to make sure especially. But it's good practice to just keep your ammunition also locked. And I think legally you have to have it stored separate. So you can't just pour your bullets into your bag necessarily. I know you definitely can't transport them in the same container. They have to be in separate containers. So I keep another padlock directly on my ammo crate or ammo case. Now again, people can still get past them. If someone's particularly dedicated, they're going to be able to bypass all of this. This is a good way to make sure that people who aren't dedicated don't get access to your firearm and your ammunition, because both of those together, as we already mentioned, can be really dangerous. And know who has or may have access to your firearms and plan accordingly. So again, if you have a 10-year-old in your house, you're going to want to store your gun very safely. Kids love guns. Few things are more attractive to a kid than a gun. Maybe candy, depending on the kid. Kids love guns. All of their favorite characters on TV use guns. Everyone they've looked up to their whole life probably has or uses guns.
Yeah,
they
like
see
people
it on
like
television,
BRG.
cops using guns, soldiers using guns, superheroes using guns. They like guns. And guns are admittedly cool. So we want to make sure that, but like we covered at the beginning, guns are also a liability. So we want to make sure that any child...
That explains why, like, a lot of, nothing really ever totally explains anything, but that demonstrates why, like, a lot of people in DSA and other left organizations are like, oh, you're so fucking weird about guns. But yeah, a lot of people are weird about guns. Like, they think that everything can be solved with the barrel of a gun. And at this stage of the struggle in the United States, we're not going around getting swifty with the Sig Sauers. But, at the same time, like if you totally refuse to have any dealings with them whatsoever, you kind of set yourself up for failure.
Or any person who has access to a gun, we restrict that access as much as possible if we don't want them getting it. Now, if you live entirely on your own, you might be able to or might feel comfortable having a lapse in safety or not being super redundant because you're the only one who has access to that firearm. But know who may have access to your firearm is also important. Maybe your sister has children and she'll be bringing them over for the holidays. You might need to up your firearm safety. Or, like we just saw in the news, in which someone had their rifle stolen from their car. A thief may have access to your vehicle. If the only thing between your firearm and someone who wants it is your car's auto glass, that's not the safest way to store your firearm. So we always want to make sure not just who does have access to your gun, but who may have access to it, and plan accordingly. Now again, if you're using this or intending to use this for personal defense, and you want to wake up in the middle of the night and immediately have your gun ready, you can get special safes or such to accommodate that. But again, even in that case, store your ammunition.
I just ordered that microphone. But check out the comrades. Shit. It's quite a bit of stuff on here. Direct Action United, check it out. It's a lot of cool shit on here. It's a DIY show. Punk rockers. But whatever. We all need to come together across our various subcultures. So, yeah. Looking like the gay Elmer Fudd today. Somebody else said Deadpool and Wolverine. You know, I don't know why like people still do this like counter protest shit. Like, why would you go to a place where there are thousands of people that disagree with you and willfully start shit? A good practice to keep people away from your guns is not talking about them too much. That is also true. Like it's kind of like a running meme that the people who always have their guns stolen are the people with the like all the Second Amendment bumper stickers and "Don't tread on me" Gadsden flag bullshit all over the back of their lifted pickups. Like those people get robbed all the time. So yeah, nobody needs to know what you have. Nobody that you don't trust needs to know what you have. Because like for what? Like why are you going around waving a metal dick? Why are you going around waving a plastic dick? Is your real dick not big enough for you? But yeah. Anyways, go back to this. Like, why the fuck would you, if you know that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that disagree with you, why would you go there by yourself and willfully rile them up? Like, you're just asking. Like, these people did nothing wrong. You got a big-ass megaphone. Like, bro. Right? Of course, these people are angry. These people's relatives are getting deported. These people are out here throwing down for their people, and you're out here fucking with them. Like, the same shit happened at Black Lives Matter protests. Leave people the fuck alone. Never get in the way of the masses in their wrath. It's not going to be a good time for you. So, like, they're like, oh my God, this is illegal. So, bro. Would it be anti-communist to work for a gun manufacturer like Smith & Wesson or SIG? What are you talking about? Am I opposed to communists knowing how to manufacture firearms? Absolutely not. I am not opposed to communists picking up skills that they can one day use at the service of the people and their party. Solaris Paradox, I've always wanted to ask you this. Like, are you indigenous? They're throwing a fucking party. This is big St. Louis energy. They're throwing a fucking party after driving the Klan, the fascists, out of their area. So this is a longer video. DSA needs this energy. Like the left in general needs this energy. Like, no, we're not walking away from you people. We're not disengaging. You people are on our fucking turf. Get the fuck out.
We got these punk ass Nazis out here, y'all. In the zone.
It's a carnival. I love this. This is proletarian carnival.
I'm on my way to DJ, man. I done came. What the fuck wrong with these motherfuckers? They lost their goddamn mind.
They didn't need anybody with a red flag parading in front of them. They just saw enemies in their area and they took it out.
Today.
You're a Native American Lakota, so you do have the right to talk like that.
Fuck these bitch ass motherfuckers.
They want to die today.
Hey, man, what's up, Come over here. We'll kill all of them. Fuck them.
They can die today.
Fuck them motherfuckers.
I can't stop them.
Hey, man. We don't want them at, well, okay.
They can die today. They done came to the wrong hood with that shit.
This is how every working class neighborhood, regardless of color, regardless of ethnicity, should be. Like, note that this is entirely spontaneous on the part of the masses. I think somebody put the initial call out, but like they didn't need somebody with a DSA flag or a PSL flag or a bunch of those fucking signs out waving around. The thing with the leftist organizations is that we react to shit. We show up after shit has already happened. I guarantee you, like a week from now, there's going to be a bunch of leftist organizers out there like handing out pamphlets and shit that nobody gives a fuck about. Like, well, what is there to talk about? Yeah, they ran the fascists out of the neighborhood. That's what you're supposed to do. Like, what is there to talk about? That's the left's problem. They talk too fucking much.
Yeah, bro.
What's up?
So both the fascists and the cops are armed. Why would you show up armed to defend some fascists?
It's time to go to war. Get him the fuck out of here, man. Goddamn. Get him the fuck out of here. Yeah, exactly. I'm with you, man. You can't do that. No. Goddamn. Yeah. Ain't nobody scared of you, mother.
I hate this. Like, our ancestors would have waited in ambush and murdered all of those people. Like, no, as a matter of fact, compared to our ancestors, we're kind of soft. Our ancestors were not, like, these people would have felt afraid to show up in our ancestors' areas or our ancestors' farms in the first place. Like, our ancestors would not tolerate this. Granted, they didn't tolerate this either, but quit heaping scorn on the heads of our ancestors. Our ancestors got that. Our ancestors won the fucking Civil War, for fuck's sake.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, the African Blood Brotherhood, the ABB, which later merged with the CPUSA for good or for ill. USA Letterman jacket. But, yeah, they were like, the reason that white people didn't really talk about the Tulsa Massacre is that a lot of their dads and uncles and cousins and brothers did not come home from Greenwood, because like a lot of those white dudes were World War I vets, a lot of those black dudes in Greenwood were World War I vets too. So it was sort of a civil war between former U.S. Army vets, and the white people basically only won because of sheer force of numbers. But yeah, we got down and dirty with them. So now it's quiet. But yeah, they silenced the phone probably because they didn't want to incriminate anybody, even though they're still showing people's faces. But we're not doing that BS in the hood during Black History Month. Yeah, like if it wasn't for the cops, they would have gotten washed. And they're still like people are still evading the cops. They literally want these dudes. Can't hear y'all. The PFLP is helping to distribute humanitarian aid and also helping with the rebuilding of Gaza, which Trump is never, ever, ever going to get to build a hotel at. I don't know why he's telling people that lie. But yeah, if they could stand up to and militarily defeat Israel, was militarily defeated in Gaza. That's why they're not proclaiming victory. But if Israel cannot beat the Palestinian people, the United States and Trump's bloated mouth cannot beat the Palestinian people. Nobody can beat the people of Gaza. Nobody can beat the people of the West Bank. So, bit of history about where this happened. The neighborhood is called Lincoln Heights, Ohio, a prestigious black community, one of the only ones of its kind, that was originated in the 1920s due to segregation. Black people could not own property in certain areas, so we created the community. It started out with no electricity, no paved roads, no police or fire, and we worked our way up to all of that. So, yeah. It's an interesting website. The Forgotten History of Lincoln Heights. Of course, there's a big-ass highway rolling through it. A lot of historically black neighborhoods were destroyed by either airports or highways. Like, that was intentional because they figured that these historically black neighborhoods were hotbeds of sedition and uppityness. So they basically carried out programs of urban renewal, also known as Negro removal. And yeah, so Lincoln Heights is roughly 10% of its original size. It was the first majority African-American self-governing municipality north of the Mason-Dixon line. And it was the largest majority African-American community in America, which housed 2 grocery stores, a pharmacy, fire and police departments, 2 skating rinks, a movie theater, nightclubs, its own high school, and dozens of other businesses for its over 6,000 residents in the 70s. Over the next 30 years, the population dropped to current levels and was hit hard by the loss of manufacturing jobs and tax revenue. So independent fire and police services have been outsourced. It kind of reminds me of Kinloch in St. Louis. Like, Kinloch was also an all-black community because we weren't allowed to live in the surrounding suburbs, Berkeley, Ferguson, etc. So we said, fuck it. We built our own shit. So, some of the more prominent products of Lincoln Heights are Nikki Giovanni, the Isley Brothers, Carl Westmoreland, Dr. Charles Fold, Reverend Damon Lynch Jr., Yvette Simpson, Carl Satterwhite, Tracy Artis, several NFL and NBA players, and yeah, cool. So yeah, very proud community, and they defended this shit, which is dope. Here's another view. Look at the fucking cowards running. Oh my god, this is too funny. Yeah. So that's what happened today. Now, if you don't mind me, I'm going to go lose at Civ 7 some more. Hopefully I can keep the barbarians at bay. Peace.